Hello everyone, this is Mr. Taylor. In efforts of saving time, I'm going to hop right into the content. This week we will be discussing an introduction to argumentation, persuasion, and rhetoric, what we oftentimes refer to as modes of persuasion or appeals or persuasion-based appeals. This particular section of the class is usually the second part, and it bridges the first part and the third part. First part being introducing a strong academic tone, formatting how you write an appropriate style, APA style, how you utilize the critical analytical framework and start thinking about ideas and dissecting ideas and training your brain to think in a more academic and critical mindset. So it's bridging all of those basic ideas with research. Research is the pivotal outcome of this class or objective. Being able to conduct tangible, credible, valid research in your disciplines, majors, fields of study. All of these things are extremely important because you're going to be conducting research in all of your future classes. For those of you who are pursuing graduate school as a future endeavor, I can assure you research and APA style, for that matter, are going to be things that you become intimately acclimated with. So it's a good idea to go ahead and start learning the basics, why and how it matters. So this particular section of the class is more theoretical, and then it's explaining the gap between being an academic writer and thinker and how we actually conduct research or write research papers that are deemed university level or caliber, valid, credible research. Let's go ahead and take a look at a quick agenda. Of course, you've already seen the administrative updates above. If you haven't, be sure to take a look at those. I have some important updates there. Of course, this lecture itself, any assignments or readings you will find denoted or listed on this actual module page. Just be sure to refer to the bottom of the page to see that. Let's go over a quick recap of some of the major concepts in the class so far. The nature of this class is that we're discussing a lot of rather broad topics. It's a pragmatic class. It's teaching you how to write for your discipline, how to conduct research, not necessarily a literature class, not necessarily English classes as many people perceive them to be or have experience with. And so the idea is that you understand what the writing process is. You understand the elements of it, how it matters, why it matters, how you approach writing in an academic way in different variations of academic writing, how to incorporate style, develop a strong tone. All of those things are very pivotal. And so I know we're covering a lot of different types of topics in the class, so I want to circle back around and at least mention some of the main concepts. Now, remember, there is a study guide available for you all on the main Canvas page under course resources. Everything that we've discussed is encapsulated on that document. I know some of you all are more visual learners, so what I've done is taken the main ideas from the slides, all of the readings, and organized them by topic. And you can find the readings, all of the main topics that you need to know. So if you feel like you're lost in any kind of way, go to that guide, take a look at it, and you'll be able to see all of the main concepts. It's a where should I be list, if you will. So we started the course with an introduction to academic writing and the writing process. We learned that writing and thought are inextricably bound, meaning that writing is a reflection of thought. You can't separate the two. It's impossible. If your thoughts are not clear, if your thoughts are not filtered through the critical analytical framework, it will be reflected in your writing, which is then translated to your reader and has a direct impact on your credibility. We learned that the academic writing process has 5 steps: pre-writing, writing and or drafting, revising, editing, and publishing. Those are the 5 steps. Everything we've done up to now with our papers have been pre-writing, and we've started the drafting process. And so we will get through the rest of that part of the rest of those aspects of the writing process as we continue through the rest of the class. We also talked about writing and the communication process. We started out by looking at what is communication and how is academic writing different than other channels of communication in that process. The main aspects of that particular section was looking at how we have to front load or be strategic in our pre-writing before we write. We have to analyze our audience, our purpose, our context. We have to be critical, analytical thinkers, dissect, analyze different topics before we're able to actually write about them. And so looking at how academic writing is embedded in the communication process showed us that we don't have the luxuries of spoken word or face-to-face communication with academic writing. So it takes a lot of strategy, planning, and time. We also took a look at Introduction to Style and Style Guides. What's the difference between a writing style, generally speaking, and a style guide such as APA or MLA. We now know that style guide is very important. It keeps our writing consistent across disciplines. And of course, in this class, we're using American Psychological Association, which you will all use in your majors. We also took a look at variations of academic writing, the various different types of academic writing, with the major benchmark of all academic writing being that academic writing is objective. There's very little summary or reflection papers in most classes. Everything is mostly objective, neutral, presenting logic, facts, reasoning, and evidence to make the points for you. We also took a look at plagiarism and what that means. We understood also that through academic writing and strategic planning when we write, that the main goal is making contact with the audience, and this should say reducing static. So reducing all the interference and all of the fuzzy white noise that is an inhibitor of transmitting our message to the audience in a successful way. We understood and talked about the different types of writing in themselves, with most academic writing being expository writing or writing to inform. We talked about essays and the classical outline model for an essay being introduction, main point A, B, C, and conclusion. We talked about how to transition between those ideas, what you should do in an introduction, what you should do in a conclusion. We went through some various methods for how to focus your ideas, including bubble mapping and funneled free writing. We talked about the contextual list as a part of the critical analytical framework. The organizational structures and paragraph structure we haven't touched on too much yet, but that's coming up. Thesis statements we have talked about in detail. We talked about a thesis being a claim for your paper. For instance, the first contextual essay, your thesis statement was your claim for the argument you were making in that paper. We talked about some of the requirements for a thesis statement, a checklist for what makes a thesis statement so important and what makes it, or how you can assess whether your thesis statement is sufficient in your own writing. We talked about the three main elements of academic writing, or the three items that you always have to understand thoroughly before you approach an academic writing project. Who is our audience? What is our purpose? And what is the context of the situation at hand? Also, we talked about academic tone and what that means and how it's important. That boils down to your word choice, picking more elevated academic words, providing specific detail with the way that you are translating your thoughts into written word. That has to do with the use of your punctuation and sentence structure, syntax, or word order. It's a combination of all of those things to elevate your writing so that it deviates from being conversational to being more academic and credible. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and talk about what is an argument. Everything that you approach, every topic you approach, every concept you dissect, every idea that you introduce into and filter through the critical analytical framework is going to be a basis for your argument. Any research that you present is not going to be a reflection. It's a common misconception, and what K-12 oftentimes does that proves to be a disservice to many incoming college writers and academics is that they treat research as let's go out and filter through information and present what's already out there, when the reality is academic research is taking all of the information that's out there and repurposing it and making it into an argument for yourself. It's using it in a different way. There's no point to constantly repeat and regurgitate information. You will never summarize or reflect upon information. Instead, you will take information that's out there, data, studies, information, and repurpose it, analyze it through a different lens, look at it through a different perspective, translate it in a different way. But no matter what you're doing and how you're doing it, you are creating an argument for yourself. And so it's very important to understand the theory behind a successful argument and why that matters and how it impacts the research that you will do in the future. So let's take a look at the definition of argument. I'll read it, and then we're going to break it down to talk about and discuss its importance. An argument is a systematic attempt to support a debatable claim using logical explanations and reliable evidence. Now, you'll notice that the definition of argument will vary across different dictionaries. However, this is the communicative and academic definition of an argument. So what does that mean? Systematic, a systematic attempt. So you're making an attempt. Systematic refers to orderly, a process. There is a prescriptive chronological process involved, a step-by-step mentality to creating an argument. So it's orderly, it's a process. To support a debatable claim, a claim is to assert as fact. It's not a simple, basic factual statement. It is something that is multifaceted. It's complex. It has to be something that someone can disagree with. So it has to be an idea that can take many different formats and people can debate about in some kind of way. And so when we make a claim, that means that you are asserting your claim as fact, or you are assuming and asserting it to be true. When we talked about thesis statements in previous modules, we talked about how you were making a claim for that paper. And so when you wrote your first thesis statement as part of the contextual essay or then when you're doing that, you are making a debatable claim as the basis of your paper and for your entire argument in itself. Debatable claim, just touched on that, to assert as fact based on a topic in which opinion is typically divided, using logical explanations and reliable evidence. The logical explanation portion of that definition means your support for your argument. Not only is it the way that you're presenting your ideas, the order you're presenting your support, main point A, B, C, subpoints, etc. It's also the reliable evidence and sources and the way that you logically integrate your sources into your content. So when we refer to reliable evidence, we are denoting data or other valid, reliable information. These are your scholarly sources that you have probably become familiar with in the past. This would be your academic journals, your data-driven research studies, all of the things that are produced, all of the research conducted and produced by experts in a given field, your scholars, your researchers, your scientists, your professors, your credentialed, licensed professionals in a certain field. These are all of the sources that you use. So when we say sources, immediately most people defer de facto in their mind to the idea of citing sources. Well, we bring credible sources into our paper to bolster our own credibility, but we're also using it to support our idea in a certain way. And the way we want to get our ideas across refers to the logical explanations piece of this definition. The order in which we present our ideas and the way that we integrate and pull in our sources within that order to make a certain impact. Again, academic writing is very strategic and it takes planning. So you have to not only know what sources you're going to integrate, you have to have a solid outline and plan to your research to make it have an ultimate impact. So again, argument is a systematic attempt to support a debatable claim or thesis using logical explanations or ordering and reliable evidence or integration of your sources. We've already talked a little bit about critical thinking, but let's talk about or touch on reasoning a little bit from an academic standpoint. The definition of reasoning is the process of moving from evidence to conclusion. Note the emphasis on from and to. Reasoning is essentially the process of moving from a thesis statement or a hypothesis to a conclusion, or the main points that you're trying to convey